My beloved child, do not move away from this message yet. There is something your heart has been trying to understand for far longer than you realize, and tonight, the silence around it is beginning to break. Your soulmate has finally reached the point where carrying one hidden truth feels heavier than revealing it. And what they are preparing to confess could completely change the way you understand your past. Don't skip. Because the first thing they want to tell you is not the secret itself. It is why they waited so long. There were nights when they almost reached out. There were moments when your name appeared on their screen and their fingers hovered over the message box. They typed words. Deleted them. Started again. Then closed everything because they could not imagine what your reaction would be once you knew. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. And remember, this is a fictional spiritual story. A dramatic journey about guilt, misunderstanding, forgiveness, and a truth that has been buried for too long. For months, your soulmate believed silence was protecting you. They were wrong. Silence was only making the distance between you larger. What they have been hiding connects to one of the most painful chapters of your past. A chapter you thought was already closed. A chapter involving someone you lost. Not through anything violent or sinister, but through a heartbreaking separation that changed the direction of your life forever. Your soulmate believes they were responsible. But what they mean by responsible is not what you are expecting. Don't skip now. Because this is where everything begins to turn. Years ago, before your soulmate fully understood what you meant to them, they made a decision. At the time, it seemed small. Almost insignificant. One conversation. One choice. One piece of information they decided not to share. They never imagined that decision would create a chain of consequences. And they certainly never imagined that one day they would fall deeply for the very person most affected by it. You. That is why their eyes have sometimes looked different when you mentioned your past. That is why certain questions made them suddenly quiet. That is why there were moments when everything between you seemed beautiful, and then without explanation, they pulled away emotionally. You wondered whether they were losing interest. They weren't. They were becoming afraid of how much they loved you. Because the deeper their feelings became, the harder it became to live beside the secret. Something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate remembers the exact moment they realized they could no longer pretend. You were speaking casually about the person you lost from your life. You weren't accusing anyone. You weren't demanding answers. You were simply remembering. And then you said something that stayed inside your soulmate's mind. You said that sometimes the hardest thing about losing someone is never knowing what might have happened if one small moment had gone differently. Your soulmate froze. Because they knew about that small moment. They had been part of it. Not in the way you might immediately fear. Stay with this story. Because the distinction matters. Long before your relationship became what it is now, there had been a misunderstanding involving someone deeply important to you. Messages were delayed. Information became confused. People made assumptions about one another. And your soulmate knew something that could have cleared part of that confusion. But they remained silent. Why? That question has haunted them. At first, they told themselves it wasn't their responsibility. Then they told themselves getting involved would make things worse. Then they convinced themselves the situation would eventually resolve without them. It didn't. Time passed. People moved in different directions. And eventually someone you cared about disappeared from your everyday life completely. Not through physical death. Through the quieter kind of loss that sometimes feels almost as final. The death of a connection, the ending of a relationship, the disappearance of someone who once occupied an enormous place in your world. That is the unfinished sentence your soulmate has been terrified to complete. They believe they were responsible for the death of your connection with someone you once loved deeply. But that still isn't the entire secret. Don't skip. Because what comes next is why they are finally ready to confess. For a long time, your soulmate carried a version of the story in which they were completely responsible. Every time they saw you hurt, they blamed themselves. Every time you questioned why certain things happened, they felt the truth pressing against their chest. But recently, something changed. They found something. Something they thought had disappeared years ago. An old conversation. A message. And when they read it again, they discovered one detail they had forgotten. One detail that changes almost everything. Stay till the end. Because something huge is waiting for you. The message showed that your soulmate had not actually created the original misunderstanding. Someone else had. Your soulmate's mistake had been silence. Another person's mistake had been manipulation. And those are two very different things. Suddenly, the past looked completely different. Your soulmate began rereading everything. Dates. Messages. Conversations. They started remembering little details that had never made sense. Why one person had been so determined to keep you separated. Why certain explanations never reached you. Why your soulmate had been told that speaking to you would only make things worse. They had believed someone who appeared trustworthy. And now they realized that person had been controlling the story from both sides. But your soulmate still does not consider themselves innocent. That is important. They know they had a choice. They could have questioned what they were being told. They could have spoken directly to you. They could have trusted your ability to handle the truth instead of deciding for you. They didn't. And that is the part they cannot forgive themselves for. Yet. My child, there is something powerful hidden inside this fictional story. Sometimes regret does not come from deliberately hurting someone. Sometimes regret comes from realizing that fear made us silent when courage was needed. Your soulmate has replayed that moment countless times. What if I had spoken? What if I had told them? What if I hadn't been afraid? But the past never answers those questions. It only teaches. And now your soulmate has reached the moment where they must decide whether they will repeat the same mistake. Will they remain silent again? Or will they finally speak? Don't skip now. Their decision has already been made. They are going to tell you everything. But before they do, there is something they desperately want you to understand. They are not coming back into your life expecting immediate forgiveness. They are not planning to place the burden of their guilt onto you. They do not expect one emotional confession to erase years of confusion. What they want is simpler. They want you to finally have the truth. even if the truth costs them the relationship they wanted most. That is how serious this has become. There was once a time when losing you frightened them more than anything. Now something frightens them even more. Keeping you through a lie. And that realization changed them. Something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate recently sat alone with everything they had been hiding. No distractions. No excuses. No one telling them what they should say. And for the first time, they imagined the situation from your side. They imagined discovering that someone you trusted knew something important about your past and never told you. They imagined the confusion. The disappointment. The questions. And they realized they could not control your reaction. They could only control whether they finally became truthful. That night, they wrote the confession. Not a short message. Not 3 vague sentences. Everything. They wrote about the original conversation. They wrote about the person who influenced them. They wrote about why they stayed silent. They wrote about the guilt that followed. And then they wrote something they had never admitted even to themselves. I think this is why I fell in love with you and kept running away at the same time. Read that again inside your heart. Because that sentence explains more than it seems. Their feelings were real. But so was their guilt. Every time they moved closer to you emotionally, the secret became louder. Every beautiful moment carried an invisible question. If they knew everything, would they still look at me this way? That question followed them everywhere. Don't skip. Because there is another layer. Your soulmate believed revealing the truth would destroy your image of them. But recently someone asked them a question they could not escape. Would you rather be loved for someone you're pretending to be, or risk losing someone after finally becoming honest? They had no answer. Not immediately. But later that night, they understood. Love without truth had become another form of distance. So they made their decision. They would tell you. Even if their voice trembled. Even if you needed time. Even if you walked away. And strangely, once they made that decision, something inside them became calmer. Not because they believed everything would work out exactly as they wanted. But because they finally stopped running. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. There is one final detail in the old message they discovered. And this detail may be the most important part of the entire story. The person you lost had tried to reach you one final time. You never received it. Your soulmate did not know that message existed. Until now. That changed everything. Because for years you may have believed that person simply stopped caring. You may have wondered why they never explained themselves. You may have carried unanswered questions that slowly became conclusions. But according to what your soulmate recently discovered, the story was never that simple. There had been an attempt to repair things. An attempt that never reached you. And your soulmate now possesses evidence of it. Imagine what that realization did to them. The guilt they already carried became heavier. But alongside the guilt came something unexpected. Hope. Not necessarily hope that the past can be restored exactly as it was. Some chapters cannot be reopened in the same form. But hope that you might finally stop blaming yourself. Because there is something your soulmate desperately wants you to hear. You were never as unwanted as you believed. You were never as forgotten as the silence made you feel. The ending you experienced was shaped by missing information, fear, assumptions, and choices made by several people. It was never proof that you were unworthy of being loved. And suddenly the secret your soulmate feared revealing became something else. It became a truth they believed you deserved. Don't skip now. Because their confession contains another sentence. A sentence they have rewritten more times than any other. It says, "I cannot change what happened, but I refuse to let you spend another year believing a version of the past that isn't true." That is the sentence they are most afraid to send. Because once they send it, there is no returning to silence. You will ask questions. And they have promised themselves they will answer. No disappearing. No changing the subject. No hiding behind half-truths. For once, they are prepared to stay inside the uncomfortable conversation. Because they finally understand something. Real love is not proven by dramatic promises. Sometimes it is proven by remaining present when honesty becomes difficult. Something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate has also realized that confession and forgiveness are not the same thing. Confession belongs to them. Forgiveness belongs to you. They cannot demand it. They cannot schedule it. They cannot manipulate you into giving it. All they can do is tell the truth, apologize sincerely, accept responsibility for their part, and allow you to decide what happens next. That is where their transformation begins. Because the person who once stayed silent out of fear is preparing to speak without knowing what the outcome will be. And there is something beautiful about that kind of courage. Not perfect courage. Late courage. But courage nonetheless. Stay till the end. Because the biggest revelation is still ahead. Your soulmate has been carrying one assumption all this time. They believed you would hate them once you knew. But the person who uncovered the old messages told them something unexpected. You are blaming yourself for the entire ending when you only knew one piece of the story. Your soulmate rejected that immediately. They said, "I could have prevented it." But the other person answered, "You don't know that." Those 4 words shattered years of certainty. Your soulmate had turned regret into a verdict. They had decided that because they made a mistake, every consequence afterward belonged entirely to them. But human stories are rarely that simple. Several people made choices. Several misunderstandings collided. Several opportunities were missed. Your soulmate's silence mattered. But it was not the only thing that mattered. And now they have to face 2 truths simultaneously. They hurt you through silence. And they are not responsible for everything that happened. Both can be true. This is where the story becomes bigger than the secret. Because perhaps the confession is not only about what happened years ago. Perhaps it is about 2 people finally learning that love cannot survive forever inside assumptions. Don't skip. Your soulmate has prepared one question for you after they reveal everything. They are not going to ask, "Do you forgive me?" They are not going to ask, "Do you still love me?" Their question is different. Is there anything you have wanted to ask me but were afraid to? That question could open a door neither of you expected. Because while they have been hiding something from you, you may have been hiding your own questions. Why did you disappear? Why did you become distant? Why did you look at me like you wanted to say something? Why did you return and then pull away again? Why did everything between us feel unfinished? For the first time, those questions may finally receive answers. And some of those answers will surprise you. Your soulmate's distance was not always rejection. Sometimes it was guilt. Their silence was not always indifference. Sometimes it was fear. Their hesitation was not always uncertainty about you. Sometimes they were uncertain about themselves. That does not erase what happened. But it changes the meaning. And meaning changes everything. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. Because there is one thing your soulmate has not written in the confession. They plan to say it directly. They believe some words should never be hidden behind a screen. They want to look at you, whether face to face or through a real conversation, and finally say, "I should have trusted you with the truth." Not, "I was protecting you." Not, "I had no choice." Not, "Someone made me do it." Just responsibility. "I should have trusted you." That is the sentence at the center of everything. Because years ago they decided what you could handle without asking you. Now they understand that genuine respect means allowing another person to make decisions with the truth in front of them. And this time, that is exactly what they intend to give you. The truth. All of it. No matter what happens afterward. But wait. Because something happened after they finished writing the confession. Something they never expected. Their phone lit up. A message arrived from the same person connected to the original misunderstanding. After years of silence. And the timing was impossible to ignore. Your soulmate stared at the name. Their heart raced. Because this person could not possibly know what they had just discovered. Or could they? Don't skip. This is where the story begins to turn one final time. The message contained only a few words. "We need to talk about what really happened." Your soulmate read it once. Then again. Then a third time. Suddenly, the confession sitting unfinished beside them was no longer the only revelation waiting to happen. Someone else was preparing to speak. Someone who knew far more about the past than your soulmate ever realized. And now your soulmate faces a choice. Tell you immediately what they know. Or hear this person's explanation first and risk delaying the truth one more time. For several minutes, they struggled. The old version of them would have waited. The old version would have said, "I need more information." The old version would have allowed fear to create another silence. But they are not making that mistake again. They decided something that may change everything. They will tell you what they know first. Then, whatever the other person reveals will be faced openly. No more secrets. No more hidden conversations. No more protecting people who created confusion. Something huge is waiting for you. Because your soulmate finally understands that the real enemy in this story was never love. It was silence. Silence allowed assumptions to grow. Silence allowed guilt to become heavier. Silence allowed two people to believe things that might never have been true. And now that silence is ending. Your soulmate is preparing to reveal the secret they believed would destroy everything. But strangely, the truth may become the first honest foundation your connection has ever had. Whether it brings reconciliation, closure, forgiveness, or simply understanding, something is about to become different. Because once truth enters the room, the old story cannot remain exactly the same. Don't skip. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate opened the mysterious message. There was an attachment beneath it. An old screenshot. A conversation neither you nor your soulmate had ever seen before. And at the bottom was a date. Your soulmate recognized it instantly. It was the exact day everything in your past changed. They enlarged the screenshot. Their hands began trembling, not because of anything frightening, but because the words completely contradicted what they had been told years ago. The person you lost had never intended to leave things unfinished. Someone had deliberately prevented the truth from reaching you. Your soulmate whispered, "No, this changes everything." And then they noticed one final line at the bottom of the screenshot. A line containing your name. A line proving that there was one more person involved. Someone neither of you had ever suspected. Your soulmate stared at that name for a long time. Because suddenly they understood why the secret had remained buried for years. And why someone was desperate to speak now. They picked up their phone. They opened your conversation. And this time, they did not delete what they typed. They wrote, "I need to tell you the truth about what happened. I thought I was responsible for everything. I was wrong. But I was responsible for staying silent, and I won't do that again. There is something you deserve to see." Their finger hovered above send. And just before they pressed it, another message arrived. From the person whose name appeared at the bottom of that screenshot. Your soulmate opened it. And the first sentence made them realize that the secret they had been carrying was only the beginning. Don't skip what comes next. Because the confession is finally coming. And when the final missing piece is revealed, you may discover that the person your soulmate blamed for years was never the person who truly ended that connection at all. Something huge is waiting for you. And the next truth changes everything.